Welcome to American Paradox. I'm your host, Dr. Brian L. Garner. Today we're going to be exploring one of the most profound contradictions in American history. Black Americans fighting for a revolution that proclaimed liberty while embracing slavery. This isn't just a historical anomaly, it's the foundation of what I call Black veteranality, a framework that explains the complex relationship between military service and racial identity in America. Why is this series, American Paradox, essential? For me, it's very simple. There are approximately 2.4 million Black veterans in America today, and a 2022 survey by Syracuse University revealed that 45% of Black veterans believe their racial identity hurt their ability to advance in their military careers. Earlier this year, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General C.Q. Brown, was dismissed by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who repeatedly suggested General Brown was only in his position because of his race. Attitudes like Secretary Hegseth's are representative of the current administration's perspective of Black excellence in the military. As America approaches its 250th anniversary, American Paradox will confront this attitude with historical context and interviews with Black veterans and scholars. To confront the false narratives inherent in the American patriotic canon, we have to start at the beginning. When the Revolutionary War began in 1775, approximately 500,000 Black Americans lived in the 13 colonies, nearly 450,000 of them enslaved. Yet from the very first shots fired, Black Americans stood on both sides of this conflict, making what I describe as a pragmatic choice about military service that would define the Black veteran experience for centuries to come. This paradox began with Crispus Attucks, a mixed-race sailor who had escaped slavery, becoming the first casualty of the American Revolution during the Boston Massacre on March 5th, 1770. Attucks embodied what would become the central tension of Black veteranality, dying for ideals that had yet been extended to people like him. My book, Black Veteranality, Military Service and the Illusion of Inclusive Patriotism, examines how this framework, Black veteranality, emerges from the synthesis of W.E.B. Du Bois's double consciousness and veteran critical theory's analysis of institutionalized power dynamics. Black veteranality reveals how Black service members simultaneously embody patriotic ideals through military service while confronting systemic racism's psychological toll, navigating what critical race scholars term the white gaze. At dawn on April 19, 1775, on Lexington Green, an enslaved man named Prince Estabrook made a choice that would echo through American history. Born around 1740, Prince was enslaved by Benjamin Estabrook, a farmer and grist mill operator. When British troops marched toward Lexington, Prince stood with over 80 militiamen under Captain John Parker's command, despite provincial law prohibiting Indians and Negroes from military training. Prince was struck by a musket ball in his left shoulder, becoming the first Black soldier wounded in the American Revolution. Aspiration and pragmatism have always represented the calculus of Black military service. This moment crystallizes what I call the pragmatic choice facing Black Americans: serve a nation that enslaved them, hoping military service might secure freedom and recognition. The Revolutionary War saw between 5,000 and 9,000 Black Americans serve in the Continental Army, comprising approximately 4% of Patriots' forces. Yet their average service length was 4.5 years, 8 times longer than white soldiers. This means they comprised nearly a quarter of the Patriots' strength in terms of man hours. Consider Salem Poor, born enslaved in Andover, Massachusetts, who purchased his freedom in 1769 for 27 pounds, equivalent to a year's wages. At the Battle of Bunker Hill, Poor's heroism was so exceptional that 14 officers, including Colonel William Prescott, petitioned the Massachusetts General Court, quote, "We declare that a Negro man called Salem Poor behaved like an experienced officer as well as an excellent soldier," end quote. Of the 2,400 to 4,000 colonists who participated in this battle, no other man was singled out this way. Peter Salem, also enslaved in Framingham, Massachusetts, was freed specifically to serve in the Continental Army. At Bunker Hill, Salem is credited with delivering the fatal shot to British Major John Pitcairn, an act that skyrocketed American morale. John Trumbull's famous painting of the battle, which hangs in the U.S. Capitol, depicts Peter Salem at the moment of this crucial shot. The most complex example of this pragmatic choice is James Armistead Lafayette, who served as a double agent during the crucial Yorktown campaign. Born enslaved around 1760, James received permission from his master to serve under the Marquis de Lafayette. Posing as a runaway slave, he infiltrated British General Cornwallis's headquarters, moving freely between enemy camps while feeding false information to the British and crucial intelligence to the Americans. James's most critical intelligence detailed Cornwallis's plans to move troops from Portsmouth to Yorktown, allowing Lafayette to alert Washington and establish the blockade that led to the British surrender. Yet after the war, James returned to slavery because spies weren't covered under the Act of 1783 that freed slave soldiers. Only through Lafayette's intervention did James gain his freedom in 1778, adding Lafayette to his name in gratitude. The winter of 1777-1778 at Valley Forge exposed the Continental Army's desperate manpower shortage. General James Varnum proposed a radical solution: recruit enslaved men from Rhode Island with the promise of immediate freedom upon enlistment. This led to the formation of the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, often called the Black Regiment. On February 14, 1778, the Rhode Island Assembly voted to allow, quote, "every able-bodied Negro, mulatto, or Indian man slave in this state to enlist," end quote, stipulating that every slave so enlisting shall be immediately discharged from the service of his master or mistress and absolutely free. This was revolutionary, the first systematic emancipation in exchange for military service. But the law only lasted for 4 months. Slave owners, fearing the consequences of armed ex-slaves, successfully lobbied for the repeal in June 1778. But in that brief window, over 100 formerly enslaved men enlisted, with another 44 joining after the repeal. The regiment eventually totaled 225 men, with 140 Black Americans, by far the largest percentage of Black soldiers in any integrated Continental unit. The 1st Rhode Island Regiment proved their worth at the Battle of Rhode Island in August 1778, where they successfully repelled 3 British assaults. Their performance earned praise from observers, yet they faced the same contradiction that defined Black veteranality: exceptional service within a system that questioned their belonging. Unlike their white counterparts, these Black soldiers received no compensation for their service after the war. The very men who had fought for American independence found that freedom from slavery did not guarantee full citizenship or equal treatment, a pattern that would persist for generations. The pragmatic choice facing Black Americans became even more complex when British Royal Governor Lord Dunmore issued his proclamation in November 1775, promising freedom to enslaved people who joined British forces. Within a month, 300 enslaved people had joined what Dunmore called his Ethiopian Regiment. The Ethiopian Regiment wore uniforms emblazoned with the provocative words, "Liberty to slaves." By December 1775, nearly 300 Black soldiers served in the regiment, representing the first formal Black military unit in British service during the Revolution. The most famous member was an escaped slave called Titus, later known as Colonel Ty, who became a legendary figure in guerrilla warfare. The Ethiopian regiment's major engagement came at the Battle of Great Ridge on December 9, 1775. British forces, including the Ethiopian regiment, attacked Patriot positions but were devastated by American fire. The defeat forced the British to evacuate Norfolk, scattering the regiment. However, many survivors continued serving in other Black loyalist units throughout the war. Disease, particularly smallpox, decimated the Ethiopian regiment even as it assembled. The harsh conditions of war, combined with inadequate medical care, killed most of the original volunteers. Yet the regiment's formation marked a crucial moment. Approximately 15,000 to 20,000 Black Americans ultimately served with British forces, compared to the 5,000 to 9,000 who fought for the Patriots. Those who survived the war faced another pragmatic choice. The British evacuated nearly 4,000 Black loyalists to Nova Scotia and other colonies after the war. Some, like Henry Washington and Thomas Peters, eventually founded settlements in Sierra Leone, creating new lives far from the land of their birth. The title of my book, Black Veteranality, Military Service and the Illusion of Inclusive Patriotism, directly addresses the central paradox these Revolutionary War veterans faced. The illusion refers to the promise that military service would lead to full citizenship and equal treatment, a promise that remained unfulfilled despite extraordinary sacrifices made. As one contemporary observer noted, Black people, we were never patriots, we were pragmatists. This pragmatic approach to military service emerged from the Revolutionary War experience, where Black Americans consistently chose the side that offered the best chance for freedom and advancement, regardless of abstract political ideologies. Black veterans were less likely to receive pensions, faced discrimination in accessing benefits, and often found their service minimalized in historical accounts. These patterns echo in contemporary statistics that show Black veterans are 30% more likely to experience VA claim denials compared to their white peers. Frederick Douglass would later articulate this tension, arguing that military service earned the right to citizenship. He quotes, "Once let the Black man get upon his person the brass letters U.S., there is no power on earth that can deny he has earned the right of citizenship." End quote. Yet this promise repeatedly proved illusory, requiring each generation of Black veterans to fight anew for recognition. The Revolutionary War veterans like Prince Estabrook, Salem Poor, Peter Salem, and James Armistead Lafayette demonstrated what would become the defining characteristic of Black veteranality: exceptional service within systems that simultaneously required their service and questioned their belonging. The Revolutionary War created the template for Black veteranality that persists today. The pragmatic choice, serving a nation that doesn't fully embrace you in hopes of securing rights and recognition, echoes through every subsequent conflict. From the Civil War to Iraq and Afghanistan, Black Americans continue navigating the tension between patriotic service and systemic exclusion. The men we've discussed today, Prince Estabrook, Salem Poor, Peter Salem, and James Armistead Lafayette, weren't just individual heroes. They were pioneers of a distinctly American form of veteran identity, one that challenges us to expand our understanding of both patriotism and American identity. Black veteranality doesn't limit our understanding of veteran identity, it expands it. It helps us theorize how military service can simultaneously empower and marginalize, how patriotism can coexist with systemic critique, and how true loyalty might require confronting institutional inequities rather than ignoring them. Next month, we'll explore how the Civil War deepened these contradictions as Black veterans fought not just for Union victory, but for the very definition of American citizenship. The pragmatic choice would become even more complex as emancipation promised everything while delivering far less. Thank you for joining American Paradox. Remember, understanding our history's contradictions isn't about diminishing American ideals. It's about making them real for everyone who has served to defend them. I'm your host, Dr. Brian Elgorn.